She had been quiet since the start of the flight. The young woman in seat 14A sat by the window, head resting gently on the pillow she carried everywhere. She looked tired but calm, the kind of calm that only comes from a long, exhausting journey. No one around her knew who she was. She didn't talk much. She gave small smiles, nodded politely, and then turned her face toward the clouds. It was a late-night international flight. The cabin lights were dimmed, and most passengers slowly drifted into sleep. Some watched movies with half-open eyes, some listened to music, and some whispered to each other in soft voices. But she was different. The moment the plane leveled at cruising altitude, she closed her eyes and drifted into the deepest sleep. As if she had not rested in days, the cabin crew noticed how peacefully she slept. They even whispered once, wondering if everything was okay, because she didn't wake up even when the meal trolley passed her row. A small blanket slipped off her shoulder, and one flight attendant gently placed it back. She didn't move. She didn't stir. She slept like someone who finally felt safe. Hours passed quietly. Nothing unusual, nothing strange. Until it happened. A sudden jolt shook the aircraft. Not dangerous, but enough to pull people out of their light sleep. A few passengers looked around. Someone removed their headphones. Someone whispered, "Turbulence?" But there was no shaking after that. Just a single, sharp drop, too quick, too sudden. And then the sound came, not loud at first. More like a trembling breath through the speakers, as if someone was trying to stay calm. Then the captain's voice broke completely. "Ladies and gentlemen, his voice cracked. If there are any trained fighter pilots on board, please alert the crew immediately." Every head turned. Every blanket dropped. Every whisper froze. It felt like the entire aircraft gasped at the same time. Passengers looked around at each other with wide eyes. Some thought they misheard. Others thought it was some kind of announcement error. But the captain repeated it, louder this time, fear hidden inside his forced calm. "If there is a NY fighter pilot on board, please, this is urgent. Contact the cabin crew now." The woman in 14A did not hear any of it. She was still asleep, breathing softly, unaware of the panic slowly rising around her. People began talking in shaking voices. What's happening? Why would they need a fighter pilot? Is something wrong with the plane? A child cried. A man pressed the call button. Two flight attendants rushed down the aisle, trying to remain calm but clearly worried. They didn't explain anything. They simply said, "Please stay seated." Again and again, someone suggested calling the woman in 14A, but no one dared to disturb her. She seemed so peaceful, like she was in a different world. No one knew they were looking at the person who could change everything. The captain's voice came again, this time softer, more strained. We have a critical situation. Our first officer is unwell, and we need assistance. If anyone has military aviation experience, please step forward." People covered their mouths. Someone whispered, "This is bad." Someone else whispered, "But why fighter pilots? Commercial flying isn't the same." Another passenger murmured, "Maybe they just need someone who can stay calm under pressure." In the middle of the rising noise, the aircraft suddenly tilted slightly again. Not dangerous, but enough for fear to spread fast. Hearts raced. People held onto their armrests. A woman prayed quietly. And the sleeper in 14A finally moved. Just a little. Her fingers switched. Her head shifted, but she did not wake fully. She only adjusted her pillow and sank deeper into sleep, unaware that half the passengers were staring at her because someone earlier had whispered, "She looks like Air Force. The haircut. The way she sits, maybe she's one." But no. One was sure, and no one wanted to make a mistake. Minutes felt like hours as passengers waited, scared and confused. A flight attendant walked by again, checking rows quickly, trying to see if anyone had raised their hand or pressed the call button. with confidence. But everyone looked unsure, lost in fear. Then as she checked the left side of the cabin, her eyes fell on 14A. She stopped walking. She looked carefully. There was something about the young woman, the posture, the calm, the almost trained breathing, even while asleep. Something that didn't match an ordinary traveler. The attendant's eyes narrowed slightly, recognizing something familiar, something she had seen before in people who were used to stress, noise, and discipline. She stepped closer. Very gently she said, "Excuse me." No response. She tried. Again, whispering near the woman's ear, "Ma'am, I'm sorry to disturb you, but we need help." Still no response. The plane shifted again. A quick soft dip, and gasps filled the cabin. The woman in 14A's eyes finally opened, slow and heavy, like someone waking from a deep dream. She blinked once, twice. Then she noticed the fear in the attendant's face. Her posture changed instantly. Back, straight, eyes sharp, sleep gone. "What happened?" she asked quietly. The attendant swallowed hard. "The captain. He needs a fighter pilot." The woman didn't move for a second. Then she exhaled softly, almost like she had been waiting for this moment her whole life. She unbuckled her seatbelt. And stood up. Asterisk. The passengers watched her rise from seat 14A like someone stepping out of a different world. Only minutes earlier she had been sleeping like a tired traveler, unnoticed and forgotten in the quiet cabin. Now as she stood in the narrow aisle, everything about her felt different. Her posture, her focus, her calm eyes reading the situation. Without a single question asked, she didn't rush. She didn't panic. She simply took a slow breath, as if steadying herself for whatever was coming next. The nearby passengers stepped aside, making space automatically, as if they sensed something unusual about her. The flight attendant who woke her walked beside her, whispering nervously, "We don't know what's happening exactly. The captain only said the first officer is unwell." He collapsed suddenly. The woman from 14A nodded once, her step steady. She didn't show fear, but her eyes sharpened, like someone filing away important information. As she moved toward the front of the plane, people stared at her with silent hope. Some whispered prayers. Some simply watched her like she was their last chance. She didn't look like a typical hero. She wore simple clothes, nothing special. A plain jacket, travel-worn. Shoes and her hair loosely tied. But the way she carried herself straight back, quiet confidence, felt like she had been trained for things others couldn't imagine. The cabin lights glowed softly on her face. She did not smile. She did not hesitate. She simply walked, just. Before reaching the cockpit door, she paused. A little girl sitting with her mother held a plush toy and whispered, "Are you going to help the captain?" The woman from 14A crouched slightly, her face softening for the first time. "I'll do my best," she replied gently, giving the girl a small reassuring nod. The little girl squeezed her toy tighter and whispered, "Good luck." The woman stood again. For a second, something flickered in her eyes, something like responsibility she had tried to leave behind, something she hadn't expected to face again at 30,000 feet. The flight attendant tapped on the cockpit door. A muffled voice from inside called out, strained and worrying, "Come in, quickly." The door opened just enough for the woman to slip inside. The cabin crew closed it behind her. The passengers held their breath. Inside the cockpit, the air felt heavy. Alarm lights glowed softly, not flashing yet, but alive enough to show the situation was not normal. The captain sat in his seat, sweating, one hand trembling slightly on the controls. He tried to look calm but couldn't hide the strain around his eyes. Next to him, the first officer was slumped back, eyes half open, breathing shallow. A crew member knelt beside him, trying to keep him conscious. The woman from 14A scanned everything in a single glance, the controls, the alerts, the altitude indicators, everything. She didn't touch anything yet. She just understood the room. The captain looked at her with a mix of relief and desperation. You heard the announcement?" She nodded. "What happened?" He swallowed hard. He suddenly felt dizzy. "We think it's a medical issue." He tried to continue, but he can't operate. She knelt briefly beside the first officer, checking his breathing, then looked at the captain. "He needs medical care when we land. How long can you keep going alone?" The captain shook his head. "I can fly, but not safely for long. We're heading into rough air soon. I need someone trained. Someone with experience." She looked at the flight controls quietly. "This isn't a fighter jet," she said softly. "I know," the captain replied, eyes pleading. "But right now I need someone who knows how to stay steady. Someone used to pressure." She took a slow breath. The captain continued. "The flight crew said you might have a background. They said your posture, your way of breathing. It looked like training." She didn't deny it. She didn't confirm it either. She simply said, "Tell me what systems you need help with." The captain blinked, almost shocked by how calm she was. "You're comfortable assisting?" he asked. "I'm comfortable doing what needs to be done," she answered in a quiet, controlled voice. For a moment, the cockpit felt lighter, as if someone had opened a window. The captain exhaled slowly, as if he had been holding his breath since the first officer collapsed. He explained the current status. Some instruments were acting unusual, but not failing. The plane was still stable, but upcoming weather conditions could make things difficult to handle alone. He needed an extra mind, an extra set of eyes. She listened carefully, absorbing everything. Her eyes moved with quiet precision across the panel. Then she asked, "What's our altitude?" 36,000. "Fuel? Enough for the route, but we may need to divert." She continued asking calm, simple questions, nothing dramatic, nothing heroic. Just practical. The captain answered each one like a man slowly regaining hope. Finally, she took the empty co-pilot's seat. She didn't touch the controls yet. She simply sat, adjusted the headset, and said softly, "Tell me what you need." The captain looked at her for a long second, as if seeing someone he had not expected, someone who didn't ask for praise, didn't show off, didn't panic. Someone who came not as a hero, but as a quiet answer to a desperate moment. Outside the cockpit, the passengers waited in silence, unaware that their fate was now in the hands of a sleeping traveler who had simply stood up when asked. And in that moment, high above the clouds, she became the calm in everyone's storm. The woman from 14A sat in the co-pilot's seat like she had lived there all her life. Not tense, not unsure, just steady. But inside, she felt something she did not show, an old part of her waking up. A part she thought she had left behind years ago. The captain watched her adjust the headset calmly. Her hands didn't shake. Her breathing didn't change. She sat still, eyes scanning every corner of the cockpit, understanding the rhythm of the aircraft like someone reading a familiar map. Outside the cockpit door, silence filled the cabin. People waited for any sign, any announcement. A flight. Attendants stood close by, ready to run in if needed. Behind her, passengers whispered in careful, shaky breaths. But inside the cockpit, the woman spoke first. "Before we go further," she said softly, "I need to know the exact condition of the first officer. Is he stable?" The captain glanced at the man slumped back. A crew member was still beside him. "He's conscious but fading in and out. A passenger with basic medical experience is helping until we land." She nodded slowly. "Good, keep him comfortable. Stress will make it worse." The captain gave her a sideways look. "You speak like someone who has been in high-stress situations." She didn't respond. Instead, she pointed at a small light blinking on the panel. "How long has that been on?" 10 minutes, he answered. "Weather radar is showing a rough patch ahead." She studied the radar screen without blinking. We can't avoid it completely. No, the captain agreed. But we can prepare. She paused, letting her breathing settle into a calm rhythm she once practiced daily. The captain watched quietly, noticing how her shoulders softened, how her hands rested naturally near the panel without fear. You've done this before, he finally said, not a question, but an understanding. She didn't deny it, but she didn't confirm it either. Her past was hers. She wasn't here to impress anyone. She was here because a plane full of people needed her. The captain cleared his throat. I'll handle the controls. I need you to monitor altitude and keep an eye on the wind speeds. She nodded, understood. Her voice was steady, enough to stabilize the tone of the entire cockpit. As they approached the rough air, the plane gave a soft tremble. The passengers gasped, gripping their armrests. But the cockpit stayed calm. Wind shift coming, she said quietly. I see it. Altitude dropping 200 feet, correcting. The plane steadied again. Passengers looked around, surprised. Some even whispered, it felt like someone caught us. Inside the cockpit, she continued monitoring. The captain felt grateful for her calm presence. It was like flying with someone who didn't need instructions, someone who understood the aircraft's behavior through instinct alone. Minutes passed. Then something unexpected happened. A message blinked onto the communication screen from ground control. The captain leaned closer, reading the text. His face tightened. We have to divert, he said. She looked at him. How far? 30 minutes away. But the weather on the path isn't ideal. She leaned back slightly, thinking through everything. What's the safest option? He pointed at the map. This airport has an emergency team already on standby. They know the first officer's condition. She analyzed the incoming weather pattern, studying the movement, the pressure changes, the turbulence levels. She traced the possible path with her eyes. It's manageable, she finally said. But only if we prepare early, the captain nodded. Then let's begin. She checked the systems again. Her fingers hovered near switches, not touching anything, just ready. The captain adjusted the heading, trusting her silent guidance. Light. Turbulence rolled through the aircraft again. Just a small shake, enough to make passengers tighten their seatbelts. But inside the cockpit, her voice came through clear. Steady, she said softly. The captain steadied the controls. Another shake came, this one stronger. The oxygen masks didn't drop, but a few overhead bins rattled. Someone in the cabin cried. And in that moment, something unexpected happened. Not dramatic, not loud, but meaningful. The woman from 14A spoke to the captain the way an old colleague would calm. Steady, certain. Remember, let the aircraft ride the wave. Don't fight it too hard. The captain glanced at her with quiet surprise. That was not advice a simple passenger would know. That was knowledge from someone trained in high-pressure flying, someone familiar with machines that move faster than sound and shook harder than any storm. You've been here before, haven't you? He asked softly. She didn't look at him. She kept her eyes on the panel. I've been. Close enough, she answered. It wasn't the full truth, but it wasn't a lie either. The captain understood. She wasn't hiding because she wanted to. She was hiding because her life before today wasn't meant to be public. People like her carried stories that were meant to stay behind closed doors. But right now, none of that mattered. Right now she was the reason a cabin full of people still felt hope. The turbulence slowed. The weather ahead cleared a little. The plane stabilized. She looked at the map again. If we time the descent right, we can avoid the worst of it. The captain nodded. You guide, I'll follow. She exhaled softly. The responsibility felt heavy, but she didn't break. In seat 14A. She had been a quiet traveler. In the cockpit, she had become something else. Someone the entire plane unknowingly depended on. and as they approached the diversion route, she sensed something shifting, something bigger than the moment, something she would soon need to face, something from her past. Finally following her to 30,000 feet, the plane moved into calmer air, but the tension inside the cockpit didn't fade. The captain kept his hands steady on the controls, following the new route. Beside him, the woman from 1-4A monitored every shift, every small change in the weather pattern. She didn't blink much. Her focus was sharp, almost too sharp for an ordinary traveler. For a moment, there was silence, just the soft hum of engine start. Then the captain spoke quietly. "You're trained, aren't you?" She didn't look up, not for this aircraft, but trained. She let a few seconds pass before answering. "Enough to understand what's happening around me." The captain nodded, accepting her gentle boundary. She wasn't hiding to be mysterious. She was hiding because she didn't want attention. Some people run toward the spotlight. Others run from it. She looked like the second kind. Behind the cockpit door, a flight attendant waited anxiously. She kept peeking inside whenever the door cracked open, checking if they needed anything. Every time she saw the woman from 1-4A in the co-pilot seat, her shoulders relaxed a little. Whatever was happening, that woman made the cockpit feel less chaotic. Suddenly, the communication panel blinked again, another message from the ground. The captain read it and exhaled heavily. "They're asking for an update. Emergency team is ready. Weather is shifting sooner than expected." She leaned closer to the radar screen, and for a few seconds she didn't move at all. Her eyes traced the storm ahead. She did something quietly with her breathing, long inhale, slow exhale, as if she was syncing herself with the situation. The captain watched her. "You've done this breathing before," he said gently. She finally turned her head slightly. "Old habit. From where?" She looked back at the radar instead of answering. "The storm isn't the problem. What is?" "The wind direction. It's shifting fast, too fast." As soon as she said it, the plane gave a subtle sideways pull, not enough to scare the passengers, but enough for the captain to grip the controls tighter. She reacted instantly, her voice calm but firm. "Counter left. Don't overcorrect." The captain followed her guidance. The plane steadied dot, and inside the cabin, people felt a strange sense of relief without knowing why. A man whispered, "Whoever went to the cockpit, they're helping." A woman squeezed her partner's hand, saying, "Thank God." She stood up. The woman from 1-4A didn't hear any of this. Inside the cockpit, her mind moved fast. She analyzed the wind, the clouds, the shift in air pressure. She wasn't thinking like a passenger. She was thinking like someone trained to make decisions under pressure. Someone used to having very little time and very little room for error. The captain noticed her silence. "You're processing something," he said. She didn't deny it. "We need to descend earlier. If we wait too long, the wind will throw us off alignment." He checked the numbers. "It's earlier than normal procedure." "I know, but the weather isn't normal." The captain hesitated. "You're sure?" She didn't blink. Yes, that was enough. He trusted her word more than the instruments at that moment. He initiated descent. The passengers felt it gently, a slow and controlled drop. People looked around, confused but calm. The flight attendants moved carefully through the aisle, checking seatbelts, offering reassuring smiles even though they were just as unsure inside. Woman in the co-pilot seat watched the descent carefully. Everything lined up exactly as she expected. But something deep inside her chest felt strange, like an old memory knocking softly. The captain noticed her expression. "You're thinking of something." She didn't answer right away. Then she said quietly, "I used to help with training simulations. Long ago, storm descents, wind shifts, pressure drops. Stuff like this." The captain nodded slowly. "Simulations?" She gave a tiny smile, barely there. simulations, and real ones. The captain's eyebrows lifted slightly. She didn't continue the story. She didn't need to. The pieces were clear enough that the woman from 14A was no ordinary traveler. The plane dipped slightly again as the descent continued. She corrected the captain before he even noticed the drift. Tiny adjustment. 3 degrees right. He made the adjustment. She studied the instruments again. Good. Keep this line. The captain whispered, "How are you so calm?" She thought for a moment before answering. When you've been through storms that weren't made of clouds, this feels simple. The captain didn't ask. He understood she wasn't talking about weather. The cockpit atmosphere shifted into something soft: respect, trust, unspoken understanding. Outside, the airport for diversion was getting closer. They could almost see a break in the clouds. The flight path aligned smoothly. But suddenly, the radio crackled. A voice came through, rushed and shaky. "Control to Flight 7. Wind speed updated. Rapid change. Repeat. Rapid change." The woman leaned forward. "Show me the numbers." The captain read them aloud. Her face changed, not fear, but focus sharpened to a razor edge. "This isn't a normal shift," she said. "This is the kind of wind that pushes aircraft off the runway line." The captain swallowed. "Options? 2. She said quietly. "Either we fight it the moment it hits, or we get ahead of it before it reaches us." The captain asked, "What would you do?" She looked directly at him for the first time. Her eyes calm, her voice steady. "I'd get ahead of it." The captain nodded slowly. "Then let's do it your way." She took a deep breath, letting her old training fully rise. For the first time in years, she wasn't just a quiet traveler. She was someone the sky still remembered. And the storm they were heading into was about to test everything she had left inside her. Asterisk. The storm waited ahead like a wall of moving shadows. It wasn't violent, but it was unpredictable. Winds changing direction, air pressure rising and falling like a slow heartbeat. The woman from 14A watched the radar carefully while the captain adjusted the aircraft's path little by little. She didn't rush him. She didn't panic. She guided with short, calm phrases. "Hold this angle. Don't chase the drift too fast. Let the aircraft settle, then correct." The captain followed every instruction, trusting her tone more than anything else. He wasn't just trusting her skills. He was trusting her calmness. It felt like she was borrowing her courage from a place within her that she rarely opened. Below them, the cabin filled with nervous whispers. People held onto their seats. Parents comforted their children, and elders whispered quiet prayers. The turbulence was light, just enough to keep everyone alert, but not dangerous. One flight attendant moved down the aisle, checking latches, checking faces, offering soft smiles. She paused near a woman clutching a blanket and said, "We have someone helping in the cockpit. Just stay seated, we're going to be okay." Every time she said it, she believed it a little more. Inside the cockpit, the first officer was still resting, eyes half closed, breathing shallow. A passenger helping him, the one who had some medical knowledge, kept monitoring him. The woman from 14A noticed this from the corner of her eye. She murmured, "Make sure he stays upright. It helps his breathing." The passenger assisting nodded and adjusted the first officer gently. The captain glanced at her. "You really know more than flying." She didn't answer. She focused on the wind readings again. They had shifted once more, almost a full 15 degrees. It wasn't dangerous, but it meant the landing approach needed to be changed again. "We'll need a new line," she said softly. The captain exhaled. "Already?" "Yes, if we wait too long, we'll chase the wind instead of guiding through it." He nodded and adjusted the heading. She watched him carefully, not judging, just making sure he didn't push too hard or hesitate too long. "Good," she said. "Keep it smooth." The aircraft stabilized again. Just then, the clouds ahead thinned for a moment. A small opening appeared, giving them a view of something warm and comforting, the faint, tiny lights of the city far below. Not the airport yet, but a sign that the ground was coming closer. The passengers felt the change. The atmosphere softened. Many sighed in relief. But the woman in the co-pilot's seat knew it wasn't over. The worst wind shift usually came just before reaching the smoother layer. She leaned closer to the display. Her eyes followed a small line dancing on the edge of the radar. The captain noticed. Something wrong? She shook her head softly. Not wrong. Just changing again. We need to be ahead of it. He prepared for adjustments. Tell me when. You'll know, she said calmly. Just stay relaxed. He gave her a small, grateful smile. A second later, the wind hit. A quick shove from the side, nothing extreme, but enough to nudge the aircraft off its intended angle. Passengers gasped. Bags shifted slightly. A few overhead lights flickered for a moment. The captain tightened his grip. But before he could act, she spoke quickly, steady but firm. Don't fight it. Let it push. Now bring it back. Slow. Slower. There. He followed her instructions exactly. The aircraft glided back into alignment, like a leaf settling onto calm water. The passengers felt the correction smooth, almost graceful. Someone whispered, "Whoever is helping. They know what they're doing." Another soft shake followed. Another correction. Each time she guided. 2 degrees right. Center it slowly. Breathe. Let the aircraft move with you, not against you. The captain breathed exactly as she said. And soon, he found himself syncing with her rhythm. It felt strange but comforting, like learning something he never knew he needed. You've guided people through storms before, he said quietly. She didn't deny it. Instead, she looked out the cockpit window. The moonlight broke through a small gap in the clouds. Shining on the wings, she whispered, almost to herself. I guided myself through bigger storms once. The captain didn't ask more. Her voice carried something heavy: memory, pain, pride, all mixed into one. It wasn't the time to open that door. Ahead, the airport lights began to appear, faint, blinking, patient. The passengers saw it too, through small gaps in clouds. The flight attendants finally exchanged hopeful glances. We're descending, the captain announced to the cabin. Please remain seated. The passengers applauded softly, more out of relief than celebration. But in the cockpit, the woman from 14A didn't relax. Her eyes narrowed. She checked the wind readings again. Something was still off. We're not through it yet, she said. The captain inhaled slowly. Final wind shift? Yes, she whispered. And it's coming soon. The aircraft drifted slightly, just a touch. Correct now, she said. The captain adjusted. The woman leaned forward. Her posture changed. Something familiar returned to her movements, something precise, practiced, almost automatic. She wasn't a sleeping passenger anymore. She wasn't a quiet traveler anymore. She had stepped back into someone she had once been, a person who knew how to steady storms, how to read the sky, how to remain calm when the world tilted sideways. And as the runway lights grew brighter below, she whispered the words that felt like a promise to herself. Let's finish this. The runway lights now glowed clearly below, shining like a long path waiting for them. But the woman from 14A didn't relax. She kept studying the readings, the direction of the wind, the slight tilt of the aircraft, even the captain's breathing rhythm. She noticed everything. The passengers had no idea how much work was happening inside the cockpit. To them, the light shakes felt like normal turbulence. A few whispered prayers. Others held hands quietly. A child looked out the window, watching the city lights twinkle like stars on the ground. Inside the cockpit, however, every second mattered. The radio crackled again. Flight 7, wind shift at surface level, unpredictable. Be prepared. The captain replied, copy. Then he glanced at the woman beside him. Surface level winds. This is the tricky part, she nodded. Yes, this is where the aircraft either listens to you or tests you. The captain gave a small, nervous smile. And you've been tested before, haven't you? She didn't respond, but her silence said everything. She had been through storms stronger than the one outside. It wasn't pride. It was experience written quietly into her eyes. Another message appeared on the screen. Emergency team ready. Runway cleared. Asterisk. The first officer, still weak, opened his eyes halfway. You two, doing okay? The woman turned slightly, giving him a calm nod. Rest, we've got it, the captain whispered. Thank you for stepping in. She didn't answer. Her mind was already 2 steps ahead, predicting the next wind pull, the next tilt, the next moment that needed steadiness. As the aircraft lined up for final approach, she leaned closer to the window. She watched how the lights stretched forward in straight lines. A steady line meant the descent was clean. But tonight, the lights looked slightly uneven, not because of the runway, but because of the wind nudging the aircraft. She murmured, "Crosswind from the right." The captain adjusted instantly. She nodded. Good. Keep that angle. The aircraft lowered gently, falling into the final corridor of air that leads to the runway like a soft, invisible tunnel. But just as they entered the last stretch, she noticed something small but important. A light flutter at the wingtip. A tiny vibration in the control panel. A subtle sound of air hitting the fuselage at an uneven rhythm. Her eyes flickered with sharp focus. Wind changing. The captain swallowed. Again? Yes, she said quietly. This will be the last one. Stay ready. The plane dipped a little, not enough to panic passengers, but enough to signal that the landing wouldn't be as calm as expected. The captain's hands tightened. Ease your grip, she said softly. Let the aircraft move. Don't cage it. He followed her guidance, letting his shoulders drop, loosening his fingers. Breathing slowly, she watched him for a moment, then watched the runway again. The wind will push us left, she said. We counter right in 3 seconds. How sure? Very. He didn't question her. She started counting in her mind. 3, 2, 1. Now, she said. He corrected. The plane steadied. The runway aligned again. Almost perfectly. But the wind wasn't finished. A second push softer, but sneaky, came from below. The kind that could tilt a landing just enough to make it rough. She felt it in the way the nose dipped half a degree. Hold it, don't correct yet. He held out. The passengers felt a small sway. A few gasped. A mother whispered, "It's okay. It's okay." Then, almost like the wind changed its mind, the pressure eased. Now correct, she said gently. The captain adjusted. The aircraft straightened. The runway grew larger, brighter, clearer. They were seconds from touching down. But before they did, she spoke softly, in a voice calm enough to guide anyone through a storm. Remember what I said earlier. Let the aircraft ride the wave. The captain nodded. He wasn't just following instructions anymore. He was learning something deeper. How calm thinking can steady a moment. How courage can move quietly. How a stranger can become a lifeline at 30,000 feet. The wheels approached the ground. The engines hummed with controlled power. The passengers held their breath collectively, waiting for that familiar landing thump. Just before touchdown, the plane drifted a tiny bit again. Not dangerous. Not dramatic. Just enough to test them one last time. Her voice came instantly. Small correction. 2 degrees right. The captain did it. The aircraft aligned perfectly. A second later, the wheels touched the runway with a smooth, gentle roll, so soft that people in the cabin blinked in surprise. The plane slowed down. The engines reversed. The runway lights reflected off the wings like a quiet promise that everything was finally under control. Inside, the cabin silence. Then applause. Shaky, emotional applause. People cried. People laughed. People held hands. Even those who never clapped for landings clapped now. But inside the cockpit, the woman from 14A didn't react. She simply exhaled. Not in victory, in relief. The captain looked at her with grateful eyes. I've flown for years, but I've never seen someone handle a storm like that. She stared at the runway ahead, her voice soft. I didn't handle the storm, she said. I just didn't let it handle us. There was something deep in her tone, something unspoken, something heavy, something from her past that still lived inside her. The captain wanted to ask, but before he could, a call came from the cabin. Captain, the passengers want to know who helped you. The woman from 14A froze slightly. She wasn't expecting that. She never wanted attention. She just wanted everyone to be safe. And now, the moment she had avoided for years was waiting outside the cockpit door. The engine slowed as the plane rolled gently toward the gate. The emergency inside the aircraft. Passengers still clapped softly, some wiping tears, some pressing hands to their hearts. They didn't know exactly what happened, but they knew. Someone had helped save them, and they wanted to thank that person. Inside the cockpit, the woman from 14A sat back in the co-pilot seat, finally letting her shoulders rest. The storm inside her mind was settling too, like clouds parting after years of carrying weight. The captain gave her a grateful look. They want to meet you. She stared at the instrument panel instead of him. I didn't do it for applause. Lie. No, he said gently. But they're grateful. And they deserve to know they weren't just lucky. Someone stood up for them. She shook her head softly, not in fear, just in quiet refusal. I don't want attention. I never did. The captain didn't push. He understood that she was someone who lived between shadows, someone who helped without expecting anything. People like her didn't act to be seen. They acted because something inside them couldn't ignore a cry for help. The cabin door opened. A flight attendant stepped inside with careful steps. Captain, she whispered. People are asking. They're calling her the woman from the front. Some thought she looked like she knew something. They want to say thank you. The woman from 14A took a slow breath. She stood not straight like earlier, not in a trained posture, just as a tired traveler again. I'll talk to them, she said quietly. But only for a moment. The captain smiled, grateful for even that. When she stepped out of the cockpit, the cabin fell into a hush. Dozens of eyes turned toward her, curiosity, gratitude, relief written across their faces. She didn't look like a hero. She looked like someone who simply belonged there, like someone who had always been meant to stand up when things got difficult. A little girl, the same one from earlier, was the first to speak. She held her toy tightly and whispered, "Did you help us land?" The woman knelt slightly, looking into the child's hopeful eyes. "I just helped the captain a little," she replied softly. The little girl smiled. "I told my mom you looked brave." The woman's heart softened. "You were brave too. You stayed calm." The little girl whispered, "I just watched the clouds." The woman placed a gentle hand on the child's shoulder. "Sometimes watching the clouds is enough." A man nearby, his voice still shaking, said, "We don't know what happened, but thank you, really." Another passenger added, "Whoever you are, you saved us." She shook her head, trying to step away from the praise. "No, the captain flew the aircraft. I only helped him stay steady." But people didn't stop thanking her. They didn't cheer loudly, they just spoke with honest gratitude. Quiet words that carried weight. An elderly woman touched her hand softly. "You were calm when we couldn't be. That means something." A father holding a baby said, "My family's alive because of your calmness." A teenager whispered, "You didn't even panic." Their voices were gentle, not overwhelming. And slowly, the woman from 14A realized something. She didn't need to avoid gratitude. Sometimes letting others say thank you was part of healing too. She nodded quietly, accepting the moment, not proudly, not heavily, just with a soft understanding. When She returned to the front. Paramedics entered to take the first officer out on a stretcher. She stepped aside, giving them space. The captain thanked her again. "You should tell someone about your background," he said softly. "People like you shouldn't stay hidden." She smiled faintly, a small curve that held years of stories. "Sometimes people like me help more when we're hidden." The captain didn't argue. He sensed that she carried something unspoken, something she had left behind, yet something that still lived inside her. The aircraft door opened. Passengers began to exit slowly, many nodding at her one last time. Some whispered thank you. Some simply offered warm smiles. She acknowledged each one with a small nod. When the last passenger stepped out, she gathered her small travel bag. The captain stood near the door. "I wish I could tell the world what you did," he said sincerely. She adjusted her jacket. "You don't need to. The ones who needed to know, they know." "Will we ever know who you really are?" he asked. Gently, she looked at him, not with mystery, not with distance, but with quiet truth. "I'm just someone who didn't want to let fear win today." The captain nodded slowly. "If every stranger in the world was like you, the skies would be safer." She almost smiled at that almost as she stepped out into the fresh air. The wind touched her face, not harsh, not strong, just a calm breeze. The night felt peaceful again. The storm was behind her, both outside and within. She walked toward the terminal, blending into the line of ordinary travelers. No one would know her name. No one would know her past, but everyone on that flight would. Remember one thing. A quiet woman in seat 14A stood up when it mattered. Not for praise, not for attention, just because she could. And sometimes, that is what makes a person extraordinary.